Himalayas. Himalayas. But you were talking something specific about Himalayas.
Drainage.
Drainage. And what does drainage do?
Helps to reclaim the land.
Not reclaim, build the land, construct it, raise it, develop it. Not just reclaim. It does reclaim also, but when we started talking about Himalayas, why did we start talking about Himalayas?
Affects the Indian region and region.
Pardon? A little louder.
Affects the our continent, Indian continent in a great extent.
It is Indian continent or subcontinent is the gift of Himalayas. We started there. Now, one major thing we had already discussed, that it prevents the Siberian or tundra winds to arrive in India. That is one major role that it plays. So it's a major cause of whatever climate we have in India, because it prevents the cold winds from arriving here. That is one thing. Second thing that we studied yesterday, that we tried to understand yesterday, that by organizing a drainage, by being a storage and a drainage of fresh water resource, largest freshwater resource, highest freshwater resource, it is also one of the greatest drainages on this earth. And the drainage is very significant. That is not an ordinary drainage. That is, the principle is higher the drainage, higher the kinetic energy, and higher the amount of water that it carries. The larger the catchment, the higher the source of drainage, the larger the catchment. Since Ganga is the highest drainage, Ganges constitute the highest drainage, it also constitutes the largest catchment area. So it is also a large resource. It's not an ordinary resource because it is the highest resource, therefore it has the largest catchment. It is a simple thing that when something starts from a great height, the lower heights naturally will join it. So a very large part of the Himalayan drainage joins the Ganga drainage before it reaches the high seas. But we will talk about that. I have put 4 terms here. You are students of science and technology and engineering and technology. Are you familiar with these 4 terms? Can you read them? Plant, machinery, instrumentation, and tooling. What is a plant and machinery? Complete thing. In a manufacturing unit, the plant and machinery is the thing that produces, that manufactures. In the production line, in a production system, plant and machinery is the basic unit. Why do we need instrumentation? Suppose we have an engineering unit. What is the role of instrumentation and what kind of instrumentation is needed in an engineering unit? Well, students of science and technology, some suggestion. Suppose you have a metallurgy unit. You are producing metals or malleable castings or metals which have 2-3 metals. Or there are steels that have some other metals also involved in it. So, what kind of instrumentation you need? Why do you need instrumentation? Can you run a factory without instrumentation? Instrumentation has some, but this term can also be transformed into instrumentality. Then it will change its meaning. But instrumentation you must understand. And tooling, what is tooling? Assembling, correcting, fixing. You need tools to do that. All right. I just noted this that in nature also there is a plant and machinery, there is instrumentation, and there is tooling. Human body also is a plant and machinery, and there is lot of instrumentation involved, and instrumentation is very important for human body also. It's also a production system, it's also a factory system, and you need tooling also. Can you tell me something about human tooling? What is the human tooling? Which human tool you can think of? Human body has a lot of tooling, but there is some very important tooling, which is also unique.
Arms are the tools.
Yes, these hands. You see, nature has created a very unique tooling. This is not an ordinary tooling. Science will take another 1,000 or 10,000 years to design a tool like hand, which can handle all kinds of toolings, which can operate a computer, which can operate a typewriter. This tooling is a very basic tooling, and it's very important tooling. Human body also has this tooling. Nature also has lot of tooling, and as we study these dimensions of landscaping, habitat, biosphere, and what was the fourth thing? Ecosystem. In that we'll find that this terminology is also useful. And when we are talking of India as a landscape, we are talking of India as a biosphere, then all this terminology is also very relevant. In any case, all this aside, besides, I just wanted to talk to you about the we talked of drainage yesterday. A very unique drainage, a very large drainage. What is the design of this drainage? How this drainage is designed? Can you see this hand? Can you see some very thin bones, very thin veins? You know how this is done? How this hand becomes operative, or a foot? You see, there are two things. There are veins. Is this spelling all right? V-I-N-S. Then we have bones. In these bones there are tarsals, and there are some other kinds of, I can't remember all the names now, but there are these. Now when you see this hand, this is designed, the hand and foot. See this very unique instrumentality, lots of functions. It can hold a pen, it can hold a spoon, it can hold a knife, it can operate many things, you see. Now how is it made possible? There have to be a lot of sensitivities which can easily be communicated with the mind can easily tackle them. And these sensitivities have to be, too intricate, too involved, because suddenly you want to use only your little finger. So 3 fingers must go back. You want to use the whole grip. So all this instrumentation needs very thin interconnected system of veins, bones, tarsals, marcels, So in a hand or in a foot, see, this designing is called herringbone design. Herringbone, can you explain what is herring technical term? Is it not used? This is not.
I would not be able to.
No. Okay. Perfect. If there are any science, any technology students, herringbone is simple. That when you are, a drain is coming. Lots of drains are joining it. See, and they all become one drain, and then they again spread out into all kinds of crisscrossing, all kinds of thin veins, thin bones. That is herringbone designing. The word is HERRING, herringbone design. Both hand and foot are designed on a herringbone system. Herringbone system is also there in rest of the body because it carries veins, blood, and lot of information system, nervous system, endocrine system. All this is governed by the herringbone arrangement of the body. Backbone has these all kinds of bone systems which keep informing the mind. So this herringbone word has been borrowed in nature, and drainage, the instrumentality of drainage is, margin drainage at least is herringbone drainage. That a very thin stream would begin from somewhere. Here is my friend who has visited Gormukh. He would see that Gormukh is only a small place and there's only a small stream starts. And this small stream becomes Bhagirath by the time it arrives in Gangotri. It becomes quite a large stream. And then soon after Gangotri there is Kedar Ganga joining it. Gangotri is coming like this and Kedar Ganga is coming from the eastern side and joining it just after Gangotri. As you enter Gangotri, this Sangam is there. But that is not important. Important thing is that all the wide streams are joining it. Small streams, tiny little streams. See, yesterday we talked of that old lady who explained to me, who wanted that even that ordinary, that small tap, that small spring should not be stopped, it should continue flowing. Why should it continue flowing? If these small streams are not joining, then there will be no big river. There will be no drainage system. So even the tiniest drains are important. Like the tiniest bones and tiniest veins are important in the instrumentality of hand. Similarly, drainage is constituted by a large number of flows, by a large number of springs, by a large number of streams. They all join together. Now, this is what you make this stream is made, Ganga is made. Now again this instrumentality is there. River is coming like this, and suddenly there is a spate in the river. We are in the monsoon season, and there is spate in the river. Now what does it do again? You reverse the hand. This is how herringbone drainage constitutes a river. And then when river is coming back to the land, how does it makes the land? Again it distributes whatever it is bringing into small tiny streams. The main stream will flood water will spread and again constitute a herringbone drainage system to spread whatever it has brought. So it collects life, it distributes life. Am I making some sense? That you collect life from streams, small streams. You make a big stream. And again, you spread life. That is what the role of herringbone drainage is there in India. Now, we have been talking along with the salient feature of Himalayas. We have also been talking about the coastline. Now, the crucial thing that needs to be understood is that there is a relationship between this drainage system and the coastline. What does it do to the coastline? We did talk
Reclaims
about
lots
it.
of land.
Pardon?
It reclaims lots of land
Reclaims?
on the coastline.
Reclaims.
Sedimentation.
Well, it keeps
Control the
it.
salinity.
The salinity issue was discussed.
Reclaiming the salinity.
You see, salinity and moisture. What happens if you take some salt in a plate or in something and drop just one drop of water? What will happen to the entire salt? It will moisturize. What is this process? What is this process called? There is salt. You drop a single drop. What does it do? This is full of salt. Just one drop of water, with the help of the salt, the moisture contained in the salt moisturizes the whole water, the entire lot of salt. Salt has a tendency to ingress. See, seashore, this is all salt. And there is high tide. The sea water gets into the mainland and leaves some salt there. What will this salt do? It will saline soil further. If it is not washed away, it is not washed into the sea, it is not washed back into the sea, what it will do? It will start ingressing into the land. The word is ingressing. Note down this word. This vocabulary is important. You see, most shores that do not have a washing system get saline, and salinity keeps increasing, and if proper system of washing is not there, and if like we have, plains along with the seashores, large plains are also there from Bengal. if you take the Indo-Gangetic plain, not Indo-Gangetic plain, take the Gangetic plains, and the Gangetic plains right from Bengal to Delhi or even up to Haridwar, Dehradun, or like that, or if you take Indus, by map जरूर रखो यहाँ पे उनको इसमें वो रख लिया करो जो please, that is very important. Somewhere here is Bengal, Orissa is there, Andhra is there, and Tamil Nadu is there. These are plains. These plains. If this salt that is ingressing, that starts ingressing in Bay of Bengal, in Bengal land, if it is not regularly washed, what will happen? We will have saline soils right up to Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Haryana. All this will become salty land. And what would saline do? Salinity do?
Decrease the productivity of the soil.
Productivity will be finished.
Eliminate, not decrease. Wipe out the productivity.
There will be nothing. There will be only some salt left. Salinity is a very dangerous problem. It's a very major problem. It's not an ordinary problem. Now, our scientists have developed a habit of saying, for last at least 120 years or more than 120 years, at least for about, you can say for about 150 years, our scientists, engineers, etc. are saying that no water should be allowed to go into the seas. I want you to don't take my word. You start thinking about it on your own. That if we don't let the waters go into the sea, what would happen? And most, I would not name them, they are very eminent people, they are very highly respected people. They have been in the most eminent positions in this country, and they have been saying, they have been also scientists, and they have been proclaiming, shouting from housetops, lot of water is being wasted into the sea. No drop of water should be allowed to go to the seas. So, we come here for value-added education to understand that whatever scientists have been talking, you see, this is a science institution, and science institution has started thinking in terms of value-added education. Because it is scientists claim that no water should be allowed, no fresh water should be allowed, all fresh water should be used for irrigation or for some manufacturing purpose or for some industry or for something. Now, here is a proposition for you to understand that whether water should flow into the sea and how much water should flow into the sea also has to be decided. Because salinity is there all the year round. Salinity does not say that now is the summer time, I will stop. The high tide in the seas continues constantly. Every day there is a high tide. Every fortnight there is a high tide. With the rising of the moon there is a high tide. And when there is a high tide, sea would enter the land at least half a mile, less than half a mile, and it would leave lot of salinity here on this coastline. And we have been talking that our coastline is the most productive coastline on earth. Do you see some relationship between the Himalayan drainage and the coastline productivity? Now there is another dimension to it that I want to, because we have to finish this course also in any case. So I would very quickly, somewhere here is Indus. You know Indus? You know Karachi? Karachi is also a delta. Karachi is a delta like. So there is Indus Delta here, and from Indus Delta we continue, and there is Ganga and Brahmaputra Delta here in Bengal. Now what happens to the water, the fresh water that comes to the seas? You must do these small experiments. Take 2-3 types of water, sweet water, saline water, fresh water, and put them in a glass slowly. Don't, and see if they mix. Now when lot of fresh water is entering the sea, what would it do? Will it mix with the saline water? It will, some of it will mix, but it is said, I am not a student of oceanography, I have never studied oceanography, but I have talked to friends and they tell me that a freshwater stream underneath the Indian coastline binds the Indian coast, a freshwater stream. If you will start studying a little bit of geography, world geography, any geography, and know the relationship that these undercurrents, is there a word for undercurrents?
This is the word.
No, there is another word. कुछ और भी कहते हैं undercurrents को. There are hot undercurrents, there are cold undercurrents, there are freshwater undercurrents, and there are different water undercurrents. All seas have these undercurrents, and these undercurrents affect the climate of the coast. At least 15, 20, 100 miles or more. See, if we had a world map, that would be easier. See, southern England has a finer climate compared to the rest of the England. Why? Because there is a hot water current that goes along the southern coastline of England. That is the basis of it. Now this freshwater undercurrent that binds the Indian coast is also a major factor in constituting the prosperity of our coastline. That is why our coastline is so rich. Of course, there are backwater systems, and these backwater systems, you used the word, Aziz, what was that word?
Estuary.
Estuary. What do these estuaries do? They wash salinity, one thing. Another thing what they do, they create a moisture regime. Take down this phrase also. They also constitute a moisture regime. And what does a moisture regime do? We did discuss this fact that water is not, when it is, moisture is a productive factor. It keeps on, generating some energy, some manifestation of energy takes place when moisture mixes with space, sun, soil, and atmosphere. It becomes very productive. Moisture is the basis of that kind of productivity. That's why it has been discovered that Indian coastline is one of the most productive, scenically one of the most beautiful, and in terms of habitat, it has everything besides, of course, human population. Yesterday, somebody was talking to me that Western Ghats are in trouble because population is increasing. The human population is part of the habitat. And when habitat is productive, of course, there will be population. Habitat comes into difficulty only when we start mishandling it. And why do we mishandle a habitat? Why would a scientist say that no water should be allowed to go, no Indian fresh water should be allowed to go into the seas? Why would a scientist say that?
He really alienated from his habitat.
Simply because he doesn't know, he is ignorant about what fresh water is doing. There are many other things. When you start talking about these things, you see this Bay of Bengal, this is Bay of Bengal. This Bay of Bengal is the most disturbed sea on earth. Regular pilots cannot negotiate the ships from Calcutta port to Tuticorin port. Very specialized pilots have to be trained. Bengal pilots, they are called Bay of Bengal pilots. They have to negotiate howsoever, whatever they may have spent a lifetime negotiating seas, navigating on high seas. But for negotiating the Bay of Bengal, because this is one of the most disturbed. And why it is one of the most disturbed seas? Because it is it takes the entire drainage of Ganga and Brahmaputra. All that, you see, lots of things have been said, and you see, our ignorance about the Himalayas is of almost Himalayan size. At least it is as large as the Himalayas are. Ignorance about Himalayas is not ordinary. So friends, we would stop this lecture here today and discuss whatever we have tried to discuss in these last 30-40 minutes. That why it is important to know your habitat and start appreciating landscape, not just because Maqbool Fida Hussain or Maqbool Fida Hussain of course didn't do landscapes, but there are others who did landscapes. So that because some painters, there is a landscape, there was a landscape here also somewhere. It is missing now. Not just because some painters find a fancy for landscape. Landscape is part of human mind, part of human existence, part of human consciousness. And it is part of human consciousness because it is the primary basis of the habitat, with which we should be very familiar. Landscape painting is important, landscape painting is significant because it constitutes our being. If there is no landscape, we will also not be there. We are part of a landscape. And to blend with the landscape and to get it into in our nerves, and we becoming part of the landscape should become a habit, matter of habit. It need not be through a classroom, or it need not be, and that can happen when you start interacting with nature. A lot of picnicking, a lot of going round, a lot of visiting natural places, that becomes a habit. That's why it is important that people go to visit Goa or Kovalam or Pondicherry or Tuticorin or all the other these beaches, Sundarbans, all these areas. So this is where we will stop today, and let us find out what we have done in this class. And I will also check up whether I completed most of the things or not. This is all that I wanted to discuss today. At least instrumentation, meaning of instrumentation is clear. So landscape has a plant, has a machinery, has a instrumentation, and has a tool. And if you understand all these terminologies and all these contexts, then you will understand that there is an interrelationship. They are connected. The landscape of coastline is connected with the Himalayan landscape. The instrumentalities, Himalayan instrumentalities, are related to our coastline instrumentalities. Right?